Okay, welcome to the last chapter of the text, Emerging Trends, Technologies, and Applications. I want to spend a little time talking about the chapter, but before I go into that, I want to talk a little bit about why I consider this chapter to be important. Emerging Trends. This chapter is going to be looking at technologies, applications, changes in the marketplace, that are beginning to have an impact on information systems at this point. The reason why this is important is most of you are probably going to be graduating in 2 to 3 years. This course is intended for sophomores for the most part, and by the time you graduate, the things we've been talking about might still be in place, but there'll be a whole suite of new technologies that you're going to have to deal with in the professional world. And so this chapter gives you a glimpse of what to expect. Now, most of the technologies that are discussed in this chapter are already in place. They're not, science fiction. Okay, and kind of prepare you for the technology that you'll probably be using in 2, 3, 4 years. Okay, I should also point out that we did skip a couple of chapters in this text. Skip chapter 9 on global information systems and chapter 13 on intelligent information systems. It's unfortunate that we can't squeeze those chapters into the semester, but if you have some time, even after the course is complete, you may want to go back and just read through the chapters and see how information systems are designed and implemented on a global scale. And of course, if your inclination is to work for a major corporation, a Ford Motor Company or Coca-Cola or McDonald's, that chapter 9, will have information that's probably going to be fairly important for you. Chapter 13 has to do with intelligent information systems, artificial intelligence. And it's actually a fascinating chapter, the capabilities that we're developing in that area. But again, something had to give, so I chose to skip that chapter as well. So let's go ahead and talk some about chapter 14 and take a look at the learning objectives, okay, or learning outcomes as this particular author likes to call them. The first is going to be summarizing new trends in software and service distribution, and this is important. It begins with a discussion of push-pull. Okay. Next, you're going to be dealing with a couple of new terms: application service providers, ASPs, and software as a service, or SaaS. In a nutshell, the key thing that you need to understand what an application service provider is, and that's someone who is providing capabilities. An excellent example might be Salesforce.com. And then software as a service, what they are doing is they're providing an application, a way to manage your customer relationship, your CRM. Online on the web, as opposed to you having to actually have a software package that you install on your own system. Okay, so you'll be looking at discussion of ASP and SaaS. Okay, the second learning outcome is to describe virtual reality components and applications. You'll be discussing or reading about some of the technologies that are available, some of the uses. Certainly in terms of engineering, in terms of games, you may have heard of Oculus Rift, which is a new VR headset device that's available for certain games on certain game machines. And it is a fascinating technology from a technological perspective. I think it's pretty incredible, but in terms of business applications, I think the author overstates it a little bit. Okay, learning objective 3 is talking about radio frequency identification. This is used quite a bit already, known as RFID. Okay, and the idea is a small chip that has a low-powered radio transmitter built into it that's sending out information about what is contained within a package to which it's attached. Okay, Walmart and many major retailers have embraced RFID. In fact, they'll require that manufacturers affix RFID chips identifying contents to pallets or to shipping containers. And then when those containers arrive at a loading dock at a retailer, no one needs to open the box to see what's inside. There's simply a scanner that scans the RFID chip and tells them what's there. The fourth learning outcome, you'll need to be able to explain quick response codes. You've seen these. Okay, QR codes. Okay, those funky little boxes with embedded information that essentially is giving directions, for instance, to go to a website or something of that sort. And so these are actually becoming fairly ubiquitous. Okay, especially in certain publications, you're going to be seeing this more and more frequently, especially as smartphones are gain acceptance within the public. Fifth learning outcome, summarize new uses of biometrics. We're talking about things like retina scans, iris scans, thumbprints. The latest iPhone 5S, there's a thumb scanning device. We're actually seeing these devices are being augmented. They're being improved to the point where they can actually sense things like heart rate, breathing, and we're beginning to see health applications being brought to devices like smartphones using biometric devices. But the biometric device is essentially a device that measures something unique about your body, and that can be used for ID. In fact, there are some excellent articles that have come out recently about how essentially biometrics are going to replace passwords. We won't have to remember passwords anymore. We'll simply go to a computer, it'll scan our thumb, and we're off and running. That technology works for access to a device. It does not yet work for access to a website, or at least it's not in common use, but they are developing that to where you could, if you go to a website and you need a password to get in, instead of having to type in the password, you'll simply place your thumb on the thumb scan device on your computer, and it will transmit that image to the web page, and the web page will say, yes, you are really Joe Schmo, and welcome to the website. So you'll be reading about that. Okay. Learning Objective 6 is actually a fairly large section that covers a lot of things. New trends in networking, specifically Wi-Fi and WiMAX and Bluetooth. And of course it includes grid utility and cloud computing. So let's take a look at some of these. Obviously our wireless. Now of course we've talked about these already. Chapter 6, having to do with data communications. And you're introduced to wireless. You go into a little more depth here and learn about some of the different types. I think everybody is familiar with Wi-Fi. WiMAX is larger scale, usually metropolitan wide. And of course Bluetooth is your personal area network. Very short range, very low power. I think most of you are already familiar, at least, with the concept behind Bluetooth. So that's one area that you'll be looking at. You'll also be discussing grid computing. Now, grid computing is fascinating. We don't have in place the infrastructure for grid computing quite yet. It's still in development stages. But the thinking is this, that if your computer needs more processing power, then what it can do is over a network, it can send a portion of what it's working on to another computer that has some idle time. Okay, so in terms of grid computing, you have your computer, it's working just fine, but if you ask it to do something, let's say if you're trying to render a video, something of that sort, that needs more processing power to complete the job quickly, it might be able to offload some of what it's doing to another computer that's out on the grid, which releases the CPU to work on the more intensive tasks on your machine. Okay, so grid computing, and of course we've got the cloud. In a sense, it goes back to service, software as a service. Is providing storage capabilities on servers over the internet. If you've used Google Docs or Google Drive, you're working with cloud computing there, but most of the major players are introducing their own cloud services. They give you some free storage. I think with Google it's 30 gigabytes, which is a lot of storage. And if you need more, you pay on a subscription basis. Okay, so much per month for additional storage. But it goes beyond that. Cloud computing can also be software as a service, where you're talking about applications. And then the last learning outcome 7, is discusses nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is working with devices on a molecular level, building robots that are just a few molecules big. Some fascinating technology here. That being said, the real application of nanotech is still decades away. So for you, in terms of business computing, I don't place too much emphasis on this section. And just this is a proof of concept. This looks like a little nothing image. It's an electron microscope image, and it was actually an animation they had going at a molecular level. So we're learning how to manipulate molecules individually, but this is the extent of what we can do, is do some little animations playing with molecules. The idea of building robots that can be programmed to actually grow buildings, for instance, which has been speculated, that's a long way off. Okay, so there's our learning outcomes again. You'll be reading on, or you should be able to summarize new trends in software and service distribution, describe virtual reality components and applications. You should be able to discuss uses of radio frequency identification, and also the different kinds of RFID. You've got active and passive RFID. Explain how quick response codes work. Talk a little bit or summarize new uses of biometrics, going beyond simple security. Describe the new trends in networking, including grid, utility, and cloud computing, and of course being able to discuss uses of nanotechnology. In terms of priorities, the most important learning objectives here are number 1, the new trends in software and service distribution, and number 6, the new trends in networking with grid, utility, and cloud computing. Those are the ones that are already being put into place today. We're seeing a major shift towards implementing those practices. Enjoy the chapter, and we'll wrap this course up.